Aaron is an artist, a motorcyclist, a tech geek, queer out, sex positive, happily married, skeptic, and many other things. It's very exciting. Love that bio. And you're really passionate about civil rights, LGBTQ rights, especially trans rights. And one of the long-term partners of you is they are trans and they live in the Midwest. And so that's pretty exciting. I really want to just kind of like go back in. Welcome to BiConic here, and this is what I'm calling the show. It's very exciting. And I want to actually ask you questions about when you were here in the Bay Area. You were part of the bisexual network here in the Bay. Was that in the 90s?
Still sort of extant, yeah.
Yeah. Was it in the 90s or was it earlier? Like,
it was, well, okay. So I didn't actually figure out for certain where my sexuality was until early 2000s.
Yeah. So
I was 36. I'm 55 now.
So it was about like the 20th year of that organization that you were kind of
yeah. In. So it was in the 2000s. You know, it's when I started going to the festivals a lot. Like I've been to Pride once or twice before, just sort of to see what it was.
Yeah.
And then it became a lot more personal.
Yeah.
After I figured out, okay, this is actually a thing, and that was engendered by my wife and I opening our marriage and my saying, aha, now I can sort of figure this out if I get the opportunity. And the opportunity came along and I figured it out. And in fact, yeah, okay, it's what I expected. No problem. I literally had, because I was the people I was surrounded with, there was a lot of bi folks, including a fair amount of bi men.
Yeah.
And my wife's bi and has known that since she's known she's been sexual. I mean, it's been a long time for her. And she's 11 years older than me. So, you know, I didn't have any angst or any kind of problems. It's just like, okay, let's see if this works. And when an opportunity came and like, okay, it works, you know, and it was like, go on to the next thing, you know.
Well,
I mean, I'm really lucky in that way because I had so much support. I had anybody that was telling me what I was doing was wrong.
Yeah.
So that was great, you know, and I was, you know, being in the Bay Area, that was really, you know, expected, but nice that it happened anyway. Yeah.
That's good. So tell me about the people who griefed you, who told you that you weren't bi enough or you aren't really bi, all that kind of stuff. That was an interesting part of the story here.
Right after I figured this out, so this would have been around 2002 or 3 there around. Maybe 2002, I think. I was working in San Francisco, and I, you know, rode my motorcycle to work most days. And one day I just decided, oh, what the hell? And after work I got off about 4 p.m. that day. I rode into the Castro, picked a bar at random, completely at random, parked, went inside, and was pretty immediately mistaken for a lost tourist. I had to explain, like, no, okay, no. And I mean, you know, it kind of makes sense. So this big guy, you know, I'm not real tall, but I'm a big dude. And I was bigger then.
Yeah.
You know, I've got long hair, full beard, visible tattoos, helmet in my hand, jacket on my shoulder. You know, it's fairly obvious that I was being marked as a straight biker dude. You know, and you know, I was like, okay, that makes sense. So 3 months later, about 3 or 4 months later, I did the same thing, different bar, exact same result. Almost the exact same wording from the bartender.
Wow. Do they have a script?
Are you sure you know yeah. Are you sure this is the place you want to be? You know what kind of bar this is, right? Yeah. I mean, it's just like, okay. And so I mean, that's one of the things that I am not generally visible as a queer person. It's just like if I go to a BDSM gathering. Yeah. I am automatically pegged as a straight male dom, and the male part's correct, but none of the other things are. You know, I don't even do the role play thing. So it's like, don't call me sir, goddammit. You know? But I mean, it's pretty. It happens a lot, and it's like, okay, you know, I'm a prisoner of how I look in that respect. So okay.
Okay. So
and I just try to correct people when it happens. You know, it's like anytime I was wearing tie-dye in San Francisco on a Saturday night, I go out, somebody somewhere would yell at me and go, Jerry! Despite the fact that I don't really look much like Jerry Garcia and never really have other than the general outline. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I can tell you many stories about, being pegged to straight while walking in the Castro or anything. And it would be just like that. It would be very like, I could be wearing a Pride shirt and people would think I was.
Well, I mean, the only times that it didn't happen was when at someplace like Folsom or up your alley, and I'm with a guy.
Yeah.
But if I go to those things and I'm with a woman or somebody who's presenting as feminine, I generally tend to get, again, still, even if I'm there, I get pegged this straight.
And how do you mark yourselves? I mean, I'm being with man, yes, that's a marker that people can't ignore.
I did this.
You did that, okay.
And I should have put it here. But, nobody sees it, unfortunately, although I think it's a great symbol. It took me a while to come up with it. It's a double-headed arrow with male and female symbols buried in it, and it sort of, because what I'm interested in terms of sexuality spans the entire spectrum from fully male to fully female, and everything in between, and on offshoots and whatever else. Yeah. I don't really care about the gender of the person if I'm in that situation with. The topology doesn't matter, and the presentation doesn't matter as long as I'm attracted to them, and they're attracted to me. And it's like, and then, and if that matches up and we have opportunities, then fine. If not, okay.
And what's it like being assumed straight in LGBTQ spaces for you?
I have to tell people generally. It's like I'm also assumed to be white by most people's standards. I'm not. Most of my Jewish heritage is instead of Ashkenazi or Sephardic is actually Bukhari. Mm-hmm. I get at least half of my Jewish ancestry are Bukhari Jews. And so, it doesn't show in my face really unless I shave and have my lips pulled back. And you can see the fact that I have very seriously Oriental features, except for all the heavy hair, And, but I mean, it rarely gets noticed by people. And it's just like, it's the same thing, I'm not actually, and of course, a lot of people that are the people we are currently dealing with right now on the right don't consider Jews to be white anyway.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But I've always had the privilege of both being white and male. So it's once I was cued in about how that worked, I was like, I didn't want that, and I've got cousins that are both Hispanic and black. Either mixed race or they were, previous children, previous relationships, but are part of the family. So
yeah. I wanted to kind of delve into what actions did you take early on in the bi community back in the day? Were there brunches? Were there?
Yeah, I went to the bi brunches as often as I could, which wasn't very often because I was often working.
Yeah.
On Saturdays, or I was busy with stuff at home with my wife. But I went to a bunch of them. I went to a bunch of bi gatherings that were at. I don't know. I remember forgetting. It's right. It was in the Castro, right across from the Gold's Gym that had that nightclub above it. And it's a restaurant that's now closed. It was
Squat and Gobble?
No. Around the corner from there. Big place, really good place with a great bar and pretty damn good food. My friend,
I think I know the place you're talking about, and it's been the Brewcade for a while, and it's also been some other things.
And it was on the same little chunk of street where they had the farmers markets.
Yeah.
Or one of those, yeah. But it was fun. I went to as many of those as I could. I went to a lot of semi-private parties, just gatherings where most of the people were either bi or pagan or poly or kinky or generally some mix of those.
Some mix of those things.
Because that was sort of the communities that I hung out with mostly, and most of those people I was introduced to by folks in the SF fandom realm. Yeah. So.
Yeah. There are a lot of overlaps amongst all those communities, and the disabled community, the kink community, the bi community. There's a Venn diagram somewhere out there that goes through all of them.
Oh yeah.
But there's there's that little sweet spot where you've got lots of people who fit in that zone. I often think about this, like in the early 2000s, there was a lot of the marriage equality fight and all that kind of stuff. We were all, like, the bi community was all in part of that. I was wondering if I'd seen you at any of those rallies or anything like that during that time.
Might have. I can't remember. I didn't go to a lot of street protests.
Yeah.
For various reasons. I have gone to a few. These days, right now, I have not been participating in any of the protests, even though I've wanted to, because I've got asthma and diabetes. I'm immunocompromised.
You're not.
I'm not going to go out there and do that just in case. And I'm kind of worried that we might have another 4 years of this shit. I'm doing what I can to avoid it, but. Man,
that is a definite thought in my head. This idea that another 4 years. That's why I've been phone banking and text banking, a little bit of that. And working with all these organizations trying to make this work. So
the Democratic candidates are not who I would have picked, but quite honestly, I would much rather have competent adults, even if they were Republicans, if they were competent adults in power than what we've currently got. And I don't expect things to be bad under these two.
Yeah,
if they win. So
I wonder. So we talked about San Francisco and the Bay Area kind of stuff. What's it like now, being in a place that's not quite?
Well, okay, so there's just over 2 million people in New Mexico. About half of them live in Albuquerque. So there's not a big community here. There's a fairly active kink community that has some serious issues. There's a big divide there. There's been some guys, basically older white men, abusive types, and pretty standard what you see. But there isn't much alternative. There's a little bit. The poly community out here is, I can't even tell you. I don't really know what the heck's going on with them because I haven't been able to make much. I mean, they would have events, that would be announced on Facebook, and nobody from the organization would show up. It was like, what are you going to do? And I've tried to communicate with the people on Facebook, and I never get an answer. But, and of course, with no travel, all of my partners, except for my wife, are now long distance. When I left, I have one less than when I left the Bay Area because she broke up with me. She broke up with pretty much everybody and disappeared. So, okay, learned my lesson. Really listen to those inner queries about, is she really too young? Which was the case in this case. I'm pretty sure that was driving that. So, took a risk.
You live, you learn.
For a while. Yeah. So, but I mean, it is very different here. Hopefully, once things get back to at least some sort of social normal where we can go out and have gatherings again, which will happen eventually.
Yeah, eventually it will.
Yeah. Hopefully I can see people. I've got a partner I see regularly, that I would see regularly, who lives in Massachusetts, has got work in Arizona and likes to drive, so she would drive out here. My partner in Indiana, I've got a partner in Portland that I don't get to talk to or see very often, but it's a very long-term thing. And, a few other friends here and there. But one of the things that I found out is that I sort of knew, but was still kind of disappointed in that there are no men's clubs whatsoever in the entire state. If I wanted to go to a place like that, I got to go to Denver.
Wow. That's really true. Oh my goodness.
6.5 hours away. And that might happen anyway because, well, I've never been to Denver other than the airport. So at some point that might happen.
Is there a law that forbids it, or is this a new
no,
business model for you?
Enough. It just doesn't seem to be there just doesn't seem to be enough interest.
Oh.
Nobody is, as far as I know, there never has been one in New Mexico.
Wow.
But there's a local meetup group that I'm a member of, and I've never been to any of their things because they schedule them weirdly. And now they're still doing stuff, and it's like, guys, pandemic on. Come on. So yeah, I mean, I'm not working now. I actually could like go to some of these things if I wanted to, but there's a pandemic. No, no, thank you.
So what do you find to be the best way to cope when you're away from things like that? Like, especially now, like there's nothing happening except maybe these kind of things.
I talk to my partners pretty regularly.
Okay.
Other than that, I am getting old enough now that I am starting to see some of the rampant libido sort of taper off a bit. So, I don't have quite as much of an urgency with some of that stuff as I used to. I mean, honestly, that's really how it works. It's like, okay, and it's just one of those things of, I didn't get a lot of, before the pandemic hit, I didn't really have a lot of luck with the communities that are, that are here. But I expect that, I'm going to dive back into that again once, once things get back to, again, normal socialization. Until then, I just bide my time, and, I have a lot of things to distract me. Even not working, I've got a lot of things to do, and been doing a shitload of cooking over the last, since I've not been working.
What is your favorite dish that you've cooked so far?
Oh God, there isn't a favorite. Right now I'm brining. It's not kosher, but I'm not a very good Jew, so. But I'm brining a pork loin that's going to get smoked and barbecued tomorrow for we're going to have my sister-in-law and her husband over for a socially distanced barbecue meal. So, and because we just haven't seen anybody, and they haven't either for a long time.
Yeah.
And my wife's oldest sister and her husband. So, and who live here in Albuquerque.
Oh, good. So you can.
One of the reasons it's one of the reasons that we decided that this is one of the places we were willing to come.
It's the community connection there. Yeah.
Yeah, and they have legal medical marijuana here, which my brother needs, and he lives with us. He actually, it's the only medication that's ever worked for him. He's disabled.
Yeah.
Number of things. He was on the streets for I don't know how many years before we found him again and said, "Oh no, this is not going to work."
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's been living with us for now more than 10 years, I think.
Well, that is like it's a really lovely mitzvah that you're doing. Having your family around, being there for them.
Yeah, and again, so one of my sisters-in-law is here in town. My father-in-law and another sister-in-law are in Tucson, which is not that far away. Yeah. Had the pandemic not hit, we would have taken this nice little road trip through the Southwest for our 25th wedding anniversary this year, but maybe next year.
Yeah, always there's a good chance you can have it next year. That'll be great. Yeah. So we've talked about your relationships and then your familiar relationships and all of that. What's it like being sort of like the only person in the sort of, or one of two people in this family unit who is either poly or bi, and having that kind of happen?
It's not really a hassle. My brother is completely non-judgmental about it.
Okay.
He might. I mean, he was like when we were in Daly City. I would have girlfriends over, or not no boyfriends, but male friends, occasionally over. At various times of the week or whatever. And he just would like, okay, and he had his own little private space, which he does now here as well. And it didn't bother him, and he wasn't he didn't bother anybody else. And, so, I think he's just more than anything else, just happy to have a place that he doesn't have to, pitch a tent in.
Yeah. Oh.
And, we managed to get him onto Social Security. He's got medical through the VA, so it works out.
Yeah, and that's actually a wonderful thing. You've been able to sort of cobble this together.
I'm glad we've been able to
in New Mexico.
Could.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I was able to convince him to come with us, but no, I mean, he misses it. He misses the Bay Area. I do too. But then again, there are things I'm glad I'm not dealing with right now, and I don't ever have to worry about earthquakes anymore. And
the orange sky.
Right. I mean, also, I was in Southern California in '72 during the Silmar quake.
Yeah.
That was a big quake, and it killed a lot of people.
Yeah.
Did a lot of damage, and I was in a top story with 2-story house when that happened.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I was maybe 5 or 6, and it was a big deal. But I mean, okay, there are trade-offs.
Yeah.
I don't get to see the ocean very often, so. But I suppose, if I really want to badly enough, I can go visit.
Yeah, see, that is true. You can come visit us. So I'd like to thank you for coming out today and being part of this, and really this is sort of an idea that I've had about interviewing people about where they're at and finding out like what's happening in their lives these days, because it's so hard to connect with people, especially on Facebook.
Facebook, it's not a really good platform. I mean, I use it, but I'm on Facebook, and I'm being mean to people who deserve it, or I'm just doing angry reacts to all the stuff that's pissing me off, which is most of what the administration is doing and people who support them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I need a break from that every so often. So.
I think that we need to put together kind of like a buy group that meets up from across the nation that can just phone bank or text bank or do something. I
would totally be down with that, honestly. That would
awesome.
Be great.
I'll keep you in mind.
Thank you.
This is what I'm trying to do to help my brain work during this time and make sure that I don't fall apart.
This is a good thing.